All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ecovillages in Costa Rica webinar. So glad that you are here watching and tuning in or listening to the recording later, wherever we happen to catch you. My name is Cynthia, and I'm the founder of Ecovillage Tours. And I'm joined here by Jason, my good friend there in Costa Rica. Jason, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the presentation or checking out the replay. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna talk some story and maybe learn some things.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I am not in Costa Rica right now. I'm home in Vermont, and we just had a major snowstorm here. I just finished shoveling all the snow off my car and around my car in the driveway. So I'm very delighted to be talking about someplace warm and tropical. And yeah, just excited mentally to go back to January when we were together in Costa Rica leading the first Ecovillage tour. So during this webinar, we're going to be talking about the tour that Jason and I led in January, as well as our upcoming tour happening in June, plus some other tips and tricks for traveling in Costa Rica, visiting ecovillages, regardless of whether or not you join one of our tours. So I'm going to get my presentation queued up here. And if you are participating with us live, I really do encourage you to use the chat box. Jason and I can see the chat, and we would love to hear your thoughts and questions. I know we've already gotten a few questions come in earlier, so we will make sure to get to those during the presentation, or especially we'll make time at the end to cover the questions. So if you're just starting to watch, this is a webinar on how to visit ecovillages in Costa Rica without wasting time, energy, and money. That's the goal here. We'll see what we can do. And as I mentioned, Jason and I are offering another Costa Rica Ecovillage tour that'll be happening in June. This presentation is taking place in April, so a few months away, especially for those of you who are starting to think about your summer travel adventures. Encourage you to have this one on your radar, and we'll circle back at the end of the webinar presentation to talk more about the upcoming tour. So just putting that out there at the beginning. Now, if you have ever wanted to visit ecovillages, intentional communities, all kinds of amazing co-living spaces, retreat centers, permaculture farms, and maybe you've actually gone and visited one or even multiple communities on a tour, you know how overwhelming and challenging it can be to do that. I'm someone who has been very fortunate in my life to have visited 200 or more of these different intentional communities around the world. And I can tell you that it is not easy. Even someone like me, who I've been doing this for a while, it is still a challenge sometimes to get in touch with these places, to get a timely response, to figure out how to visit, to arrange all the logistics to get there, and then to make sure when you're at the community that you actually have a quality experience. And then if you're someone like maybe yourself who you're new to this and you really want to visit ecovillages, but you don't know which ones are actually alive and happening and worthwhile your time to go visit, also places where you'll have a safe experience. These can all be things that make it very challenging to get access to these incredibly inspiring centers. So to reiterate, it can be hard to visit communities because, firstly, there's a lot of them out there, which is good news, right? And in Costa Rica especially, it's kind of a global hotspot for these different ecovillages. And I know Jason will be speaking more to that when he introduces himself. You also don't know which ones to visit, as I mentioned earlier, which ones are even like happening. Sometimes you see a directory listing online and it's just a couple who has land. It's not actually a community. And then these places don't know you. So when you do reach out to contact them, it's kind of like, okay, you're just a random person out of the blue, Are they really going to open their home to you to come visit, especially if it's a more residential community? And then, of course, actually getting yourself there can be a challenge, especially in Costa Rica. Jason and I know firsthand what it's like to try to navigate the roads. Yep. He's laughing there. And then, of course, once you are at the community, you may not get the value that you were expecting as a random visitor, because why would a founder or residents who are going about their busy lives make time and space for you? So those are all things that can make it hard to visit communities. And I don't want to dissuade you too much, because at the same time, you know how incredible these places are and how necessary their existence is at this time, given all of the craziness in the world, that like this thing exists. This is a greenhouse at Alegria community. We often get asked, oh, are these like stock photos? No, these are actual photos of the communities that we visited on our January tour. Here's another one from Alegria, where we got to spend time with the founder there, Stephen Brooks. And it's one thing to see these communities and the photos and see the websites online, and another thing to actually go there and really breathe the air, have deep conversations with people, see the homes, being welcomed into the homes, to see the natural buildings and truly the new world that hopefully is emerging and that is spreading. So truly inspiring, whether or not you're thinking of actually joining or starting a community of your own, just to go and get a taste for that new world that's emerging. So hopefully some of these photos from Costa Rica are whetting your appetite to travel there. And I would say, especially if you are somebody who is thinking of joining an intentional community in Costa Rica, or it could be really anywhere, it is important to visit a variety of them to get a sense for what's out there, so that you have a better understanding of the type of community you want to join. Certainly, if you're somebody who is endeavoring to start a new community project, this is truly essential to be able to meet with the founders, hear their stories, their challenges, get a sense for different strategies that are emerging at this time, because creating communities is a new thing we're all learning how to do together that can really facilitate your project happening in a more smooth way. As well as, of course, if you want to invest in land or have the option B, given whatever else may happen in the world in the coming years, just to have something in another part of the world where you feel is a little bit more secure. And if you're not interested in moving abroad or moving into a community, but just want to foster more community wherever you're living right now, still getting to visit communities is pretty essential. So I'll pause there. Jason, is there anything you want to add to anything I shared? I'm looking at this list here.
Yeah, I don't know. Just that it's all very true. Like what you said about the difficulties of getting, even, like you said, you and I that have some reputation and experience and brands that are engineered and designed to support these places, getting a call back is not always easy. And being, I had my own permaculture education center that was a budding community, and we were vetting people. And so I spent, a dozen years hosting people looking for community and wanting a community experience. And I also fell into that thing after years of having people come through. Like, yeah, I'm sure you're a wonderful person, but I mean, I've got my kids to raise. I've got employees to look after. I've got a tree that just fell in and somebody else telling me that the water's out. I mean, it'd be cool to get to know you, but honestly, like, I don't have the time to really dedicate to dropping in with you. And when we went to all these places and we were getting like a half day with some of these founders, like touring the place, telling us their stories, getting really candid with us. I mean, there was a couple places out of the 15 we visited last time that gave more of a presentation, but I don't even think that's going to happen again, because we learned so much from that to really make sure that this other style of sitting in circle with us and just really telling us like what they went through and what was the hard stuff and where were their transition points, and like all of that was really enlightening and empowering, I think, for a lot of people to hear, and a value that I hardly ever sat for half a day talking to a guest about all the story of my place and how it, they'd have to be with me 3 months to get that much information sometimes. So no, you're totally hitting it. This is a unique and special opportunity that even if someone wanted to make all the expenses of and time to book a tour of this many places, I mean, it'd take you many times more time and you'd get a fraction of the value, and you'd probably spend many times more the amount of money. So yeah, no, it's exciting to be able to offer this to people and see them have that experience.
Great, beautiful. Yeah, and we're gonna dive next into your story and my story. I know you just mentioned that you had started a permaculture center there in Costa Rica. Maybe you want to pick up with your story wherever you want, maybe there or later or earlier on your path. How'd you get into this world of eco-villages and intentional communities, and why are you hosting this tour, Jason? And I'll stop sharing my screen for a minute too.
All right. Well, I'll try to get a quick version of it. But when I was in my early 20s living in Arizona, I was just fed up with city life. I was getting into meditation and wellness and all of that, and I just found myself in a city and not wanting to have anything to do with it. I went to the co-op. That was pretty much where I did my shopping, in the thrift store. And otherwise I stayed home, meditated, read books. And I got to a point where I wanted to walk away. And so I got rid of everything I owned, loaded a backpack, and walked out into the desert with whatever I'd need to live the rest of my life. And that turned into 6 years of backpacking around North America, visiting some really cool places, permaculture farms, intentional communities, retreat, and being a volunteer in most cases, and getting to drop in and having long-term experiences. And after 6 years of that, I later met my ex-wife, and when we got together, she was really excited about getting out of the States and raising her kids somewhere else. So we ended up buying a school bus and converted it into an veggie RV and hit the road looking for a new place to live. And so we traveled around through Latin America for a few months, bouncing around, checking out different communities or properties to buy or places to join, and never really felt full resonance until we got to Costa Rica, and we're like, wow, this is a different country. This is an amazing place. So then we spent another 3 months in our bus driving around, and it was cool. We had our house on wheels. We had our own kitchen. It was cheap for us compared to most people. We didn't have to rent a vehicle and eat out all the time and stuff like that. But still, it took us months to visit, I don't know, maybe a dozen places. And that was riddled. Like you said, you never know what you're going to find in a directory or on a website. I don't know how many places I've looked at their website. I was just actually chatting with someone today who, their website has a video on the homepage of their community. And I know a lot of the people in the community and in the video, and they don't belong to that community. And the place has no infrastructure, yet there's video of infrastructure. And it's just like, well, okay. So I, went down a rabbit hole with these people until I found out like they didn't even have permits to build yet. And yet their website looks like it's a community. And we encountered many of these back in the day. And you have to be careful when you read websites of communities. Look for words like will be, or are planning to, or are going to, because web developers get very excited about the image that they portray. And we've done the research. I've talked to more than 30 community owners around the country to distill down to the ones that are really worth visiting. Some of them, like you said, are a couple and they're in their early years, which is great. That was us. and we lived communally with many people that stayed with us. But, it's, it requires some discernment, and that comes with investigation, comes with time and expense, and sometimes disappointment. So, yeah, that's been a little bit of my trip. I also have this podcast, Regeneration Nation Costa Rica, which has opened doors for me to visit a lot of these places as well and stay with them a couple and get, again, really long-term quality time with the founders, and finding out what's the hard stuff too, like what's been tough about it, and learning through that, and even consulting with some budding community founders and helping them get over some of those rough spots and things that can hang people up. So yeah, I got more experience than the average bear, and I love sharing stories and advice with people on the tours.
Yes, yes. Such a privilege to have you, Jason. I'm so glad that this has worked out, our collaboration, and I really can't think of a better person to lead these tours. So everyone watching, I want to highlight for you Jason as the person to go to if you're wondering about eco-villages and intentional communities in Costa Rica. This is really the person who has the connections and is a great guide for our trips. And good tip too, also about being wary of the websites and the images that some of these communities portray, and doing your homework to really make sure that it's a place you want to go visit, because it's at a stage of development that you're expecting to experience. So I'll share a bit about my story. Oh my goodness. I think my journey is an interesting one because I started on this path of more alternative living pretty young in life. Grew up in the suburbs with pretty conventional parents, still pretty conventional, still scratching their heads about how I turned out the way I did. But also very loving and supporting and encouraging of me to follow my interests. And my interests were permaculture, making medicines, growing my own food, cooking my own food, and wanting to go to places where the people were also living a lifestyle that was more in alignment with my values. So greater connection with nature, more authentic ways of communicating and relating, and seeing the problems in the world and saying, you know what, there is a better way. And we can create right now, hand in hand with our neighbors, a way of life that is more meaningful and more regenerative. So that really set me off on a journey, as I mentioned earlier, to visit nearly 200 communities around the world, everywhere from Europe, the United States, India, Africa, Central America. And through my traveling, I heard time and again how challenging it can be to access communities, and how important it is to have people like myself and Jason who can serve as a bridge to support more people in finding their way into the fold of this network. And it is a really strong network, but you got to take the steps to get there. And in many cases, need to have a guide to show you the way in. So that's why I started Ecovillage Tours in 2019 as one of the first travel companies, if not still the only travel company, that focuses exclusively on ecovillages and intentional communities, offering small group tours to these places that are otherwise out of reach to the normal traveler. So we started in 2019. COVID slowed us down, but we picked back up more recently with our first tours in Europe, and then over the winter in Costa Rica. And now we have a whole suite of tours coming up later this year. So that's our stories in a nutshell. And I'll go back now to the presentation, and we'll get more into what it's like to travel to intentional communities. And I'll start by sharing a little bit more about how people normally go about this. And Jason, I'm going to encourage you to chime in as we go through these different points in the upcoming slides. So when somebody is normally thinking about going to visit intentional communities, let's say you wanted to do your own Ecovillage tour in Costa Rica, you didn't want to join our tours, but you wanted to do it on your own, which is perfectly fine. This is how you would typically go about it, starting with looking up communities online, going on the websites, doing your research, maybe identifying the ones that you want to visit. And then, of course, one of your goals is going to be to try to save money. So Jason can tell you more what this looks like. But from my understanding, this would look like renting your own vehicle, which may or may not take you across a river if you're following Google Maps. Trying to, and we're laughing because that's something that has happened.
There's tip number one. When you're in Costa Rica, consider using Waze.
Yeah. Use Waze, not Google's Maps. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just, a lot of the folks who are backpacking about, and I mean, I'll be the first to say too, I did this a lot, especially when I was in Europe in college, visiting different communities. I was trying to do it on a shoestring budget and camping out at places, roughing it, not always getting places in a timely way, not always able to, because I was on limited financial means, not always able to contact communities in a timely way to get the kind of accommodation that I would want or sign up for the program that I really wanted to attend. Jason, anything more about saving money on your community road trip, especially in Costa Rica?
Well, actually, I'm feeling called to hit that from another angle.
Yeah.
Because, I've had a lot of experience of hosting people that are trying to save money and they want to do work trade and they're not skilled in the things that we really need. And so, a lot, we offered that opportunity for a lot of people, and sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. And then, it was a little insulting sometimes to have people stay with us and be trying to not spend any money on their food and lodging, yet they'd go have a big blowout weekend and, in a weekend spend what we would normally charge for a week or two of accommodations. And that just brings up for me is like, these places need money too. And if you're traveling and trying to visit these places on the cheap, yet you find yourself buying, the nice expensive this or that, or going out and having a expensive holiday at some place, and then you come back to the place that's like really teaching you how to live this lifestyle and really hosting you with meaning, and you don't want to give them your money, like that's just something to consider. Like one of the things that I really love about what we're doing is that, we're paying our host sites. We're not just asking them to host us, hoping that maybe one of our guests will become a member of their project or something. We're kicking down. We're sharing the abundance. We're compensating them for the time that they're taking to host us. And I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind, is that these sustainability projects, they don't magically have no financial needs because they're aiming for, regenerative systems. It's quite the opposite. A lot of times these systems take more money on the front end to implement, and they save on the long term. But yeah, just as you're traveling around visiting communities or permaculture centers and looking for work trade opportunities, that's great. But if you really get value out of the place, leave them some money on the way out, even if they didn't ask for it, because they're going to put it to the best use.
Beautiful. Well said. Yes, absolutely. These centers, as you said, don't magically exist outside of our capitalist world system just because they're eco-villages. Although it's funny how frequently people think that that's the case, they still require money to operate and for people to live. That's the way it is. So great. And then another thing that I'm hoping we can speak about is oftentimes when people are thinking about a trip to Costa Rica, and maybe many people who are watching this who are looking at our June Ecovillage tour and like, June in Costa Rica? I think that's better for the winter. Jason, can you speak to like the seasonality of the like high season and winter, and then the different low seasons and the wet and the dry, and what that's like?
Yeah, the reality for a lot of these places, if they have some kind of like retreat center or some other type of financial engine that supports their project and it's based on tourism, which most of them to some degree are, they're really, and they might have expensive retreats and all of this that some people are, think, oh, you're an eco-village and you're making a profit. It's like, are you kidding me? These people, a lot of them really only have like 3 or 4 months a year that they're able to really generate some income to reinvest into their project. And the rest of the year, they're having a harder time. So, and it is during that high season when the flood of emails come in. I mean, I get them now in January and February. So many people contacted me asking me if I knew of a place that they could volunteer. And it's just like, well, this is the time when these people actually need to sell their beds. But if you really want a volunteer opportunity or something like that, visiting during these off-season months is actually when it is helpful for them, when you are providing value for them to help maintain or something like that in times when they don't have revenue to pay someone to do the menial things, and they could actually use the extra help, or company too. A lot of these communities, even their members are snowbirds, and they head up to their northern countries in the wet season. And the founders, the people that are there year round holding it down, they can get a little lonely. That's when they want somebody around that wants to help out. And so just to put that in perspective as well, the high season is not the best time to look for volunteer opportunities. But that if you're really looking for that kind of situation, which is how I lived for 6 years, I hosted volunteers for years before we realized we were giving away the farm and we needed to start to charge for the education we were giving people. The rainy season is the best time to take advantage of that type of opportunity when you're really providing value by showing up and being supportive.
And what is the rainy season, especially in June? What does that look like? I get a little scared when I hear rainy season.
No, June is gorgeous. It's like right now, it's where you get, we've already gotten like some afternoon rains. I mean, that's really, June is kind of like you get your afternoon rain. That's pretty common. But it's not torrential downpours like in, September, October, November, where you're having a hurricane season and it's like really wet. June, July, it's raining, but not oppressively so. It's generally a pretty pleasant. It can get in the way, like when I'm recording podcast interviews, or if we're at a presentation and there's a tin roof above us and it starts raining, like a little hard to hear maybe, but I think for the most part, especially with this tour, where we've made a lot of changes and we're staying longer at a lot of these places. And so we're aiming to get our presentations in early and our tours in the walk around the farm more earlier in the day, instead of like driving to the place that morning and then getting there late morning and walking around in the afternoon in the hot sun or in the rain. We're going to have less of that on this future tours. So shouldn't be too much of a problem. And hey, rain happens, Yeah.
Rain is life. Water is life. Beautiful.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I am remembering when we were on the Costa Rica tour in January, which was great. The weather was good, but it was also extremely hot and dry in some of the places that we visited, to the point where, you know, unless you covered up head to toe, you were going to get sunburn. And so I could imagine it being quite pleasant during the rainy season, and less traffic on the roads. I remember it was pretty horrific, some of the traffic days we had.
Oh yeah, there's so many people here. The country floods with people that time of year. But you know, June is a very reasonable time to tour the country. It's hydrated, everything's green and lush and fruiting, and all the birds are happy. And no, it's a great time to visit, unless you're like entirely rain averse, and then maybe wait till January. But otherwise, June should be fine.
Nice, beautiful. All right. And then another thing that people who are endeavoring to visit intentional communities often go on their own, or maybe as a couple or a family. And then I talk to a lot of people who want to visit intentional communities and are really attracted to the idea of Costa Rica, but maybe have a fear of traveling. And that fear kind of holds them back from going on the trip, or if they do go on the trip, they don't actually make an effort to connect with people. And it can be, you know, that's a sad thing when you go to travel someplace and invest a lot of time and energy to get there, but then are feeling kind of isolated and alone through the trip. And so that's one of the reasons why, whether it's an Ecovillage tour or another type of program that you can do if you are considering traveling solo, that's going to make it a much more enjoyable experience to have that community connection baked into your trip experience. And I know for many of us, we're living in this time of just hyper isolation and loneliness. So you don't want to experience that when you're traveling. You want to go and connect with locals, connect with fellow travelers, and really get that full relational experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd say, you know, to traveling Costa Rica, a lot of people really freeze up with the language barrier and all that. And having someone like myself who's very bilingual and is able to navigate a lot of those things, it just relieves so much. I remember when I first drove down here in my school bus, I didn't speak Spanish. And just asking for water, finding out where to fill our water jugs in town, that was stressful sometimes. Or to like, there's so many micro stresses in not knowing the language that coming on a trip like this, you don't have to carry that. You know, you can interact, you can practice your Spanish when you want. There's tons of opportunities. A lot of our guests were, I was impressed to see them practicing their Spanish when they had the opportunities, but that is it's not necessary, which is, you know, plus and minus. When you're traveling alone and you have to speak Spanish, you learn Spanish better. So there's an advantage there. But if you're just making a short visit and you're not going to learn Spanish in 12 days, it's nice to not have to, in order to get any of your needs met. And the other thing I'd say is you kind of understated the value of the sense of community that forms on this trip. I would say, in talking with the guests and reading their feedback forms and watching their testimonials, you know, I kept saying it was like everyone's on their hero's journey. They all thought they were doing this trip for one reason or another, to find out about communities and all of that. But they found the values that they learned so much about themselves in interacting with such a diverse group of people that came on the trip, and the sense of community that would form in just the last trips were 9 days each. In just 9 days, like this being in and out of the vehicles and, you know, lodging and like working through and having challenges come up that like, oh my gosh, is this happening? And then we get through it. And then like, wow, like the bonding that was happening on the trip was so rich. And for some people, I think really the highlight of their tour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So many people said that they came on the trip to see communities, but what they left the trip with was a community that they got to be part of, this community on wheels. And we really did make space for that, I think, in terms of not only going and visiting the communities, but then in the evenings, having a little circle and debriefing and sharing with each other what was coming up and really practicing those cooperative culture skills that exist in communities. And as they would if they were a resident in one of these places, we also practice that during our time together as a group. So I love that. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, I'm really grateful we extended it some time, and we've got the extra time in this trip that we'll be able to do that even more.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get into here soon some of the details about the trip itself. So all's to say, you can, of course, go, and many people do, visit communities on their own, not part of a facilitated tour, but ultimately you may not get the quality experience that you're hoping for because of the reasons that we just mentioned. And also, one reason in particular I want to highlight is quality time with the founders. Like Jason was mentioning earlier, when he was managing a center and needing to worry about the tree falling and the water not working and this and that as kids, And so someone like Marcelo here, who is the founder of La Ecovillage in Costa Rica, getting just even, I don't know, that hour we had of his dedicated time and attention was truly special, and something that he would not be able to give just a normal person coming on their own, but really was made possible because we dedicated that time as a group. And Jason and I had the relationship to ask that of Marcelo, and he wanted to do that for us because he knows us. So being part of an experience where there are relationships that you get to be held within and enter the circle and really get that time to ask your questions and to feel into the character of the people and the place you're visiting is phenomenal. Yeah. So really, what I would say is at this point, given what we've created with these tours, the only way that you could get full access to these communities, and especially to the founders, and also to the selection of communities that we have chosen for this tour, because there are many communities out there, but we've really had to narrow it down to just the few, and we've narrowed it down even further for this upcoming tour in June, is with the Ecovillage Tour experience. And so now we get into talking about what it is all about. And I hope that's okay, folks, if we shift now our presentation into specifically what you can get through the June Costa Rica tour happening June 9th to the 20th. And of course, you can feel free to learn more about it at ecovillagetours.com/Costa-Rica, and I'm going to put up here, in case you want to go and check it out, I'll put up the link for you. So as part of this tour, what you are going to get, and Jason, feel free again to chime in with any points that I might be missing or you want to expand on. This is going to be a 12-day guided tour. So if you were following us with the January tours, those were 2 9-day tours that we did back to back. Some people just did one, some people did the full 18-day experience. And coming out of those trips, we decided that 12 days actually would be the optimal duration of time to give more space to deepen in at each community and to give the group more time to deepen into connection with each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was part of that decision. And included in the trip, you have a fully inclusive experience. So as soon as the tour starts, we have you covered in terms of all of your transportation. We will be traveling in 3 vans. Jason, do you want to say anything about the vans and the transportation situation? And Jason will be one of the drivers along with the 2 other guides. And Jason is a phenomenal driver. I'll put that out there.
It was so fun leading the caravan. I loved our little caravan. It was, I drove adventure travel tours in the States for this company called Green Tortoise back in the day. And, besides driving my own buses down here. So I'm a road warrior. I drive just about anything anywhere. And, it was just and hey, those vans were pretty nice. You guys, the vans were as comfortable as you could really ask for. The van I ended up having was a little bit bigger, a little bit older, but this year we're going to be sure to get 3 of the newer, smaller, cozier, cushier vans. And despite that, it is important for anyone who wants to come on the road to accept and understand we will be driving on dirt roads. Not the whole time, but there are some stretches of this tour where there's going to be some lengths of road, like an hour more on a dirt road. And if you want to visit eco-villages in Costa Rica, something you're going to have to be aware of. Not all of the places are super remote, like in San Mateo. All those places are not very long on the dirt road, but some of them are. So just we've recalculated our drive time and given more spaciousness for stops, and we were doing better planning to make sure that it's more comfortable for everybody. But hey, I love it. Like, wow, these mountain roads, so gorgeous to be driving through these mountains and see the lizards and snakes crossing the road and toucans crossing the sky. And I just love it here. I love these mountain roads, and it's new for some people. And so it's a disclaimer. We will be on those roads. And also Costa Rica, nothing is in a straight line except for maybe stretches of the coastal highway. And so, and it's not fast. Like 55 miles an hour is like top speed here, and not even frequently. And it's windy. We're driving 35, 40 miles an hour a lot of times. And so just when you're looking at maps and judging drive time and stuff, it takes a while to get from place to place. So that's why we extended the length of the tour to be on the road less. But yeah, so there's driving involved. It's a tour of a country.
Yeah, of course.
And we're not trying to go to the southern zone on this trip either. So that was another long stretch. We'll be staying in the north, which will also maximizing our time out of the vehicles.
Yeah. We saw quite a few signs in Costa Rica. Bad roads bring good people. So felt like we were the ones who were making the effort to reach some of these places, and it was very worthwhile. And yes, so 12-day tour, also more spaciousness for driving. And and I'll also mention it's all inclusive in terms of your meals. So 3 meals a day and snacks and amazing fruits. And a lot of it is garden to table or farm to table. And I just have a little photo here of one of the meals that was provided to us at, which one was this? At the Brave Earth community. Amazing salad and all the greens that they had there from their garden.
What a feast.
Yeah, what a feast. Oh my goodness. I mean, I think some of the food experiences that we had were some of the top food experiences of my life, and I'm such a foodie, so that's saying something.
No. If anyone complained about the food, it was that we were eating too much.
Yeah.
That was the thing. We're just always eating amazing feasts. You have to kind of be your own gate on that.
It's a good thing that we balanced it out with like the beach visits and the hiking and everything. Burn those calories. All right. So then over the course of 12 days, we will be visiting 7 intentional communities. And as I've already mentioned, it really is a selection of, I don't know what you would say, Jason, maybe 20 more, 30 if you include all the small different centers throughout the country. Costa Rica really has a lot to offer, but we chose the 7 that we thought would offer a diversity of experiences. also based on what our past participants, after surveying them, said that they found the most value in visiting. So that's how we've also refined this trip compared to the previous tours.
Mm-hmm. And also fair enough to say that we have another 6 or 7 places we'll be visiting in January that are different than these, and they're every bit as awesome as well. We just can't fit them all in one tour. So it's not like this tour is the best places. It's just we're trying to keep the drive time down and concentrate it. But these are some of the prime places in the country, and some of the first ones that people think about, some of the more established ones in the country, this tour. So that's one of the big advantages here, is that a lot of the places we'll be visiting have been at it for some years already.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And then, as we've mentioned before, getting that quality time with the founders and the residents, being able to ask all the questions that you want, building a community along with your fellow tour participants. And then for I think many of our participants, and we'll share some of their stories here in a moment, this experience really gave them clarity on their next steps on their own community journey. And we did have a diversity of people with a diversity of different paths that they were walking. But for many of them, this was kind of that pivotal experience that they were looking for. And some of them maybe didn't even expect to find through this trip. So I'll offer that as something that you may just get, whether you want it or not, through this experience, is that really transformational moment that you might be ready for in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next on our slides, I want to talk about some of our past participants and their experience on the Costa Rica tour, just to give you a taste, maybe for those of you who are listening at home and you're like, is this really for me? Maybe you'll identify with the stories of some of these participants. So I'll just flip through a few photos and we'll mention a few things. And Jason, of course, feel free to chime in. We have our wonderful tour participant, Rohit, here in this photo, who came all the way from India to be with us. So we had a lot of Americans, some Europeans, a few people who live in Costa Rica, but Rohit was our furthest traveler all the way from India. And he himself is endeavoring to start a community project. So this was something that just gave him a lot of inspiration. And same too here with the couple in the corner of the photo. They actually, after the trip, ended up moving to Costa Rica. They didn't think that was going to happen, but they fell in love with the place, moved to Costa Rica, and now are also endeavoring to start their own community project here. Very cool. I love when that happens. You know, we've had on not on this Costa Rica tour, but we've had on our other European tours, you know, participants who meet each other for the first time and fall in love, people who end up, you know, uprooting their whole lives and doing something completely different, having a career change. Just like so cool to see how these stories pan out. Then we have here Eduardo, who, this is a very serious photo of him, but it was the only one I could find quickly. And Eduardo actually has property in Costa Rica, and so was really coming on this trip to network with the other communities that he is going to be a co-founder alongside, and also getting some valuable information about the process and the legal stuff and that goes into creating a community. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big point. Like the communities have their presentations, and they've got their idea of what they want to share. But the really special thing is that this is the opportunity to ask questions. This is the chance where they're just going to tell you how it is, and it was so beneficial to have such a diverse group of people asking such a diverse number of questions that I wouldn't even have necessarily thought to ask. So that's another big value of coming on the trip with others that are also having that same presence with the founders and hearing like, oh, I never thought of asking that. Like I'm glad they did. That's another.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Those questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we have here, Some other participants who were thinking of starting a community. We have here Rebecca, who is thinking about developing a project in Texas, but also does like a lot of other events and educational offerings. And so she was able to, I see her here at the ARC community, and then she was able to network with the founder of the ARC to come to Texas to do an event. So that was really cool.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And not all the participants were actively developing intentional communities. Some were just wanting to see if this is a lifestyle that they wanted to continue, if this was something that they could see themselves joining a community. Roseanne here thought, oh, maybe I could move to Costa Rica, but she discovered that actually the climate wasn't suited for her. So that was an important discovery that she made.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody had asked in the chat I saw earlier about the age range, and we can talk more about this in the Q&A session. But we actually had on our Costa Rica tour in January, our oldest participant, I think 82, 83 years old, was Maria, and did a phenomenal job with keeping up with the group and everything. But yeah, that was our oldest. And then our youngest was a 2-year-old. So we had a family with a very sweet 2-year-old who also did a phenomenal job managing with all of the travel. So that was very sweet to experience this multi-generational community on the tour.
And some 20-somethings. So
a lot of 20-somethings.
Also, yeah.
40,
so it's very, very wide.
40s. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the mix. And also Marek, who Marek is a member of our another program that I do. So I've gotten to follow his journey since this tour. And Marek is one of those 20-somethings who is also in a time in his life where he's making a lot of big decisions about who he's going to be in this world and where he's going to be, and has now in the process of joining a community back home where he lives in the Pacific Northwest. But it was really through this experience that he knew that this is the lifestyle for me and this is what I want to pursue. So,
another testament of like profound transformational experiences in 9 days.
Mm-hmm.
Watching his partner go through from the day they arrived to the day they left, like, wow, they got so much out of the experience.
Yeah. I also enjoyed seeing how they blossomed, right? Because they were kind of like more like shy, and then just seeing them open up more and more. It's beautiful. All right. So, whether or not you're somebody like Marek or Eduardo, whether or not you're looking to join a community or start one, I think this is an experience that is really suited to a variety of people on their paths towards wanting to have more community in their lives and experience what that might feel like. So now let's talk about your investment, because obviously this is a trip that is an investment. We've already talked about us as a tour company paying the communities that we go visit. There's also the transportation and meals and accommodation and everything. So here I'll bring up that list again for the 12-day guided tour experience of all of the transportation, meals, visits to the 7 communities, quality time with the founders, et cetera, et cetera. We have priced the tour at about $300 a day, which is already very reasonable considering all of the different expenses that you'd have to come up with and pay for on your own if you were trying to do something similar. I think we've made it quite affordable. And in addition, we have different payment plan options. So if you're like, whew, that's a big number, a lot to bite off at once, don't worry, you can spread it out over many months in different payment installments to make it work with your budget. And also, I would encourage you to think about fundraising for the trip. That's something that some of our participants did, because as we've been talking about, this is such a transformational experience that'll benefit you in your life, but potentially many other people who might be part of a community that you start or get to be in relation with you now that you've had this inspirational experience. So don't be shy about maybe asking friends and family members to support you on your endeavor to go on an Ecovillage tour like this.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the participants was telling me that other members of his community project co-funded him coming on the trip.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
God.
so he could bring that back to them, and they're like, "One of us is going to go. You're it."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sending an ambassador out, an envoy to
Mhm.
get in all that inspiration to bring back home. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. All right. Oh, and I also want to mention that we have our early bird sale that is going to be through this Sunday, April 7th. So the price that you just saw, that is only good for through April 7th, after which it's going to increase another $400. So if you are excited about the Costa Rica tour happening this June, don't wait too long. You can spend the weekend thinking about it, but then go ahead and put in your deposit. In addition to that, I really want to offer you, as participants of this webinar and anyone who is watching the webinar, this is just for you. Don't tell anyone else about it, okay? This is an offer. I want to give you an additional $300 off the June Costa Rica tour. And in addition to that, I'm offering you a 1-hour coaching and consulting call with me, which is normally a $400, a charge between $300 and $400 for such a session. So it really is quite the gift that I'm giving you. And I'm not even accepting any clients right now in the month of April. So this is a very special thing because I'm offering it in part because I won't be joining the June tour. And I know that for some of you, you're maybe excited to come on the tour and also hang out with me. Let me tell you, this is going to be a much more quality use of my time when I'm not also trying to lead an Ecovillage tour, to get that 1-hour session to answer your questions that you might have about what type of community is a fit for you, some initial consulting on your developing community project, if that's what you're into. So when you purchase the tour, be sure to use the discount code Cynthia, just my name, Cynthia, easy to remember, at checkout, and use it by April 7th to get the additional $300 off the early bird ticket price, which is already a $400 savings. And additionally, to get this 1-hour coaching and consulting call. It would be an absolute pleasure to sit down with you, hear about your story, and support you however I can. But this is a time limited offer. So this is only good through Sunday, April 7th. All right. So there you have it. That is the Costa Rica Ecovillage Tour. That is all about what it is we're going to offer, what the deal is, how you can register. Please go ahead to ecovillagetours.com/Costa-Rica to find out more. There's a ton of information on that webpage, rich with photos and videos. So just like, it's fun just even to look at, even if you're not thinking of coming on the tour. And if you are, be sure to mark your calendars to put in your deposit by April 7th. And it's just a $500 deposit down to lock in that early bird pricing. And of course, get the discount code and the session with me when you use the discount code Cynthia at checkout. And yeah, that's all that I have. Jason, you want to add anything before we go into the Q&A portion?
No, actually, I if anything, I want to address this this question that's come up in the chat.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I saw that there was a few of them. So I'll stop sharing my screen here, and then we'll see if we can pull up some of these questions. And I see Sunny offered some appreciation, and also Brooke. Thank you so much for being here with us. Yeah, let's just go into the Q&A for our final 10 minutes or so. You want to start with the local and indigenous people question?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
I'll pull
Grow
that up.
Flow. Appreciate you bringing that up. It's an important topic to me. If anyone joins my newsletter at regenerationnationscr.com, And if you jump on the newsletter, I actually share in my welcome series of emails my thoughts on cultural bridge building and sensitivity and things like that. And so, yeah, and so the question is, how do the local indigenous peoples in the area feel about the influx of mostly white expats? And I mean, obviously, the first answer is that all of them don't think any one way. Everybody has their own personal opinions and takes and preferences. Some people just have a tendency toward racism, and that's unfortunate. And they don't get to really look below that surface. I, being here for 15 years and being bilingual and having this be an important thing for me, I spend a lot of time talking to locals, going to the local development association meetings and stuff. And I don't know, I've earned trust. People talk pretty candidly with me and aren't afraid to tell me their, preferences against foreigners or what they think foreigners are doing to this country and all of that. And in some cases, I think it really, so the quick of the answer is that some people are not happy that there are foreigners in the country. What can you do? I grew up in Michigan, and I can't tell you how many times I heard people complaining about the Mexicans. Like, what are you going to do? People just want to complain and have their racial bias and their imagination that other people are the cause of their problems, when truth is we're on planet Earth and we're all really responsible for ourselves. But there are patterns that happen with some visitors to any country where they're not learning the language, they're not making the effort to connect, they're bringing a sense of entitlement with them, that they think that their comfort needs should just be taken care of. These aren't good. That's bad ambassadorship. And at the same time, I have the wonderful privilege of knowing many, 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 many foreigners in this country who are wonderful ambassadors, who take the time to connect, who have learned the language, who go to the meetings, who make an effort. And that makes all the difference. So in general, I know a lot of Costa Ricans who love having the foreigners around. We bring resources, new ideas, beautiful construction methods, regenerative farming techniques to help them get out of the degenerative cycles they inherited from their parents and grandparents. There's a lot of people who see that, there's some good foreigner ambassadorship happening here. And there's others that are touched by bad ambassadorship. So if anything, I'll use this question to really implore people traveling to take the time to connect, learn something of the language. If you know the word gracias, when you go to the grocery store and you're at the checkout corner, do not say thank you. It's insulting. At least try. So there's that side of it. And regarding these tours, and the eco-villages in general, eco-villages get a bad name sometimes because they don't have enough locals. Well, I've done a very extensive search in this country to try to find some eco-villages that are started by Costa Ricans and that have mostly Costa Ricans. I found one. They've been forming online for several years, and they just got land and they have no buildings. The thing is that I think on one side, a lot of Costa Ricans don't really feel a need to be in an eco-village. They kind of have their community. They're not living in the same disjointed world that a lot of us grew up in, where everybody's from somewhere else and they got their tribe, they got their clan, they got their family. There's not the same, and they've only more recently been inundated by commercialism and waste and bad food and all of this. So enough generations haven't gone by to build up the pressure that we've had in our countries where we're like, oh, we need a new way. It's been going bad for too long. Like there's a lesser number of the youth in this country that are at that point, although I have the pleasure of being friends with many of them. So there's still this subculture, and we're also in a country where, you know, the wages are really low. People aren't making the kind of money that foreigners are to invest in these big infrastructures. And I'll tell you, it's more expensive to buy a lot in an eco-village than to buy a lot in a pueblo. But it's not because the eco-village founders are like multimillionaires over selling lots, although there are a few like that actually. But in most cases, especially in the founding years, they're just dumping money into reforesting what the Costa Ricans deforested. And they're building communal infrastructure, the yoga shala, the communal kitchen, the roads, the sanitary systems, the water. All that costs money that someone with a single house doesn't have to worry about. So it does end up having a higher entry point for some of these communities. And it was also very endearing to see many of them offering discounted lots, discounted buy-ins for Costa Ricans, and even in some cases creating clauses where those Costa Ricans can't, because this happened. Who are you going to blame? At, I think it was Alegria, they sold a bunch of lots to Ticos, and then some of those Ticos went and sold them to foreigners at a higher price. Who are you going to blame? You know, so there's now places putting in clauses that can't happen. These lots are dedicated to Costa Ricans. So the effort is being made to make these places more accessible. But the bottom line with all of this is that global travel exists. We live in a new era where people of all countries are traveling to all countries, and white skin is a really bad indicator of describing people, because even Eduardo's from Peru, despite his fact that he's got light colored skin. I really encourage people also, despite the like craze this world is in their anti-racism, that like we need to put that down. We need to really look at more important qualities of people and start to modify our worldview based on that and not the color of people's skin. And so that's a lot of answers to that question, but it is an important one to me. And I do think it's important to be good ambassadors and to be good representatives of people that look like us. But boy, I'm really different than somebody else that looks like me. If you ask a Tico talking to me and a Tico talking to somebody else who just came in off the boat, like, I'm well appreciated here to anybody who knows me, and I got white skin. And so it's not a good indicator.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you for that question. That was really good question. Great answer, very thorough. And there's so much more to be discussed. And that's one of the things that came up a number of times during our tour, and we got to have really deep conversations about these topics of global travel and immigration and being expats and these eco-villages. What does it all mean? Where's it all going? So beautiful. All right. Well, feel free if anyone else has any final last questions, but I see we are at time, or actually a bit over time. So I think we will wrap it up there. And feel free, of course, if you have more questions, feel free to write to us. You can write to get more information about the Costa Rica tour or any of our tours at info@ecovillagetours.com. And Oh, we just had another question. Do you want to respond to that one quickly, Jason? Or
Marley, it is a wonderful question. It's one that came up with a lot of our guests visiting the places, and there aren't any communities I know of that are specifically oriented to seniors directly. As a model to be like specifically oriented to that, I mean, it's not necessarily sustainable. You need a multi-generational community in order to really thrive. A community of elders is short-lived. What can I say? But it is important for these multi-generational communities to plan for and accommodate elders that they'll become one day, and those that want to come in. So it is tricky. I know I've read some really great info at ic.org that I think out of any of the places I've looked for solutions to this problem of not having enough places really know how to host this population in a good way that feels equitable to everybody. There's a lot of really great information and inspiration there that can be read in their blogs and some presentations that are given. But in Costa Rica, I can't say that any of the places we went to are specifically oriented to that, although some of them are better prepared to dance with that.
Yeah. And a lot of the communities we visited did have retirees who had moved there to live out their, final chapters in a beautiful eco-village in Costa Rica. So definitely a mix of ages, as Jason said. All right, great. Well, thank you all so much once again. Hope to see some of you on the Costa Rica tour. I will be having another conversation tomorrow if any of you are interested in our Slovenia tour. That tour is also going to be part of the early bird sale happening this weekend. So I'll be talking with the guide of that trip, Nara Petrovic, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. So maybe I'll see you there for that as well. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you for your time and your work. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And that's a wrap. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Ciao.